Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great. Welcome to my channel and to this new video here. I'm Birgit from Koba.Siani and I'm into costumes lately. I made this outfit, which might not be complete yet, I don't know. I feel an accessory, perhaps a bag here is missing, but this you will see at the end of the video probably. Welcome to this new video here, which is about my medieval inspired fantasy outfit here, mainly about the dress, which is my layer dress pattern with the sleeve add-on with sleeve number 3. These are my patterns, which you can of course purchase in all my shops. The links you will find below in the description box. This video is not a sewing video for the layer dress. These you will find in the layer playlist on my channel, but it's more about the workmanship details, about the embroidery on the dress, and it's about the other components of this outfit, this cloak and this fur shoulder thing, I don't know what to call it in English, and probably also the bag, which I haven't started yet at this moment. It was really fun to make this outfit and also environmentally friendly, because I've not purchased a single thing for this outfit. Everything, all fabrics and details and whatever I found already at home. For example, the dress is made out of bed sheets, which I've dyed with avocado peels and kernels. Then I reorganized my fabric stash and found this wool fabric. The other fabrics here I've also had at home, and this one is an old IKEA fur, and the bag I'll make out of an ugly old handbag of mine. So sometimes the best things are created of what's already here. Before we really start into the sewing project and this inspirational video, please don't forget to like, as always, and hit the follow button if you don't want to miss a video from my side. But now, let's start. Have fun! I have been gifted really a lot of old bedsheets, and this fun sewing project was finally one for which I could use up some of these. I also had these pillowcases with some lace, also a perfect detail for a medieval inspired dress. Originally, I wanted to make the loops for the side lacing in another color, perhaps also in leather. This is why I made the decision to cut up the pattern pieces roughly at first, then dye the fabric, and then sew the dress afterwards. If I had known back then that I would make all in one color, I honestly would have sewn the dress first in the white fabric, and then I would have dyed the ready garment. With this method, it only would have been important to use cotton sewing thread, at least for all visible seams, so that the thread is also nicely dyed with the avocado color. Polyester materials, in this case the thread, need different dyes. As you can see, I'm cutting the skirt part already a bit longer, as I wanted to have a floor length dress, and this is plus 30 centimeter from the original midi layer length. The lace I've planned for the sleeves, and I wanted it to run along the upper edge. As it was a little bit short, I already prepared myself for puzzling the fabric. In general, preparing the sleeve parts was a little bit difficult, because back then the sleeve pattern wasn't ready yet, so it was a lot of eyeballing. Then came the whole dyeing process. At first I weighed the dry fabric. This is important for later. Then I could start with the mordant process. And before doing anything mordant or dye bath, just wet your fabric and let it soak in water for around 20 minutes, as wet fibers absorb everything better. As a mordant, I oftentimes use soy milk diluted in water, more precisely 1 part soy milk with 5 parts water. I've learned this somewhere on Instagram, and I found it quite easy because soy milk is available everywhere. And apparently the protein molecules in the soy milk prepare the fabric well for the dye bath. So the whole wet fabric goes into this liquid now and stays there overnight. I did this during a warm weather, so I'm quite happy to have this bowl here, which fits into the fridge. When it's cold outside, you can also put your soy milk mordant bath outside where it's fresh so that the milk doesn't go bad and smells. The next morning I squeezed out the fabric and I spun it in the washing machine so that it could dry faster. Here again, please make sure to wash a normal load of laundry in the washing machine soon after this so that your washing machine is clean again and doesn't smell. And then I hung the fabric out to dry. And this whole process is repeated twice, but the soaking duration in the soy milk can be these 2 times a little bit shorter. Again, this is nothing which I thought of, this is what I've learned on Instagram. For the dye bath, I've let avocado peels and kernels simmer in water for around 1 hour. And here it is important that you let this boil not at too high temperatures, because this would destroy the pigments. I've experienced this once with onion peels, which I've boiled too much, and the result was that the color turned too brown. Also, for a nice shade of pink, you should use the double weight of the dry fabric in avocado. That means, for example, if your fabric weighs 500 grams, you would need 1 kilo of avocado peel and kernels. If you don't eat that much avocado, that's no problem. Just collect the dyeing material in the freezer. Next, the avocado is strained so that the dye bath looks like this now. Again, for preparation, let your fabric soak in water for around 20 minutes and then you can put it in the dye bath. Then you can let this simmer again for around 1 hour. And again, don't let this boil at a too high temperature. In the end, I let the fabric dry, but this time not in direct sunlight. And if you have the time, let it sit for a few weeks at a dark, dry and cool place so that the color pigments can settle. Then you can let it soak in water with a little bit of vinegar, which helps to fix the colors. And then you wash it with a mild soap to finish the whole dyeing process. Here I'm now finally cutting the exact pattern pieces. And if you have a close look on my fabric, you will notice that the color is not that even and also not that deep. My explanation for the unevenness is definitely that my pot for the dye bath was a little bit too small perhaps for all the fabric, so it had no room to really float around in the dye bath. So I probably should have dyed the fabric in 2 portions, of course with the exact same dye bath, only with more water in it, so that the result would be the same. For the lightness, honestly, I don't have an explanation. I really thought my fabric would get a little bit darker, mainly because I followed the rule with the amount of avocado peels this time. But still, my experience with dyeing with natural colors is not that deep. So I guess I still have to deal with surprises here and there. So if you want to know more about this topic and go deeper in the details, I guess there are really a lot of real experts out there to follow. I'm sharing here only my personal experience with this topic. At that moment, the sleeve pattern was also ready, and I was really lucky that it fit onto the fabric I prepared. Because of the embroidery I planned around the sleeve hem, I added a lining to the sleeve. And for this I used a fabric which also would repeat in the fabric or leaf embroidery along the hems of the dress. Here is now how the ready embroidery looks like. And now I'd like to show you step by step how I made it. I started with this wavy line here, which is basically just a decorative stitching from my sewing machine and consists of leaves, which is quite matching to my overall design. So at first I drew on the line, which I will later would follow with the sewing machine. To keep the waves even, of course I measured here and there a few points for my orientation. When stitching the line, I put embroidery backing underneath because partly the waves are on one layered fabric and I was afraid that the stitch would come out differently on the hem area and the area where there was only one layer of fabric. When doing those decorative stitchings, it is important not to sew too quickly so that the stitches can be built nicely. So this just takes some time. This clip here, by the way, is sped up. As you can see, I'm just following my marking with the sewing machine. Here I finished the round along the hemline, and to secure the seam ends and beginnings, I'm using the normal straight stitch so that this part would not be too obvious. Just look how beautiful the stitch is. By the way, this is stitch number 82 on my Bernina B335 machine. Afterwards, I tore off the embroidery backing. By the way, this is a backing which is made to tear away, but I think there's also another type which you can dissolve with water. Then I continued with the leaf applications. For all these kind of fabric patches, I'd like to use this application foil or adhesive foil. I'm using here the one which is called Fleece of Fix from the brand Vailline, but I guess there are also other brands who sell this. So on this foil there is one paper-like side and the other side feels rough. This is the glue. So with this rough feeling side, you iron on the foil on the wrong side of the fabric, which is the fabric for the patch, not the main fabric, of course. Then you can draw on the form of your patch. In my case, these are little leaves, but this could be really anything. Then the leaf can be cut. With this method, I prepared quite a lot of leaves in 3 different colors. Then the paper can be pulled off the leaves. You can already see there that the gluing part has transferred to the fabric. And with this gluing side of the patch material, you put the patch to the right fabric side of your main material. And then the form can be ironed on. If you're planning more complex forms where the colors should overlap, it can be that you have to think in layers. Like for a flower, for example, you would prepare the bigger part at first and then add the small center of the flower on top. Also think about when to make the stitchings. Either you stitch one part on before adding the next, or you can stitch on all at once when all forms are already ironed on. It really doesn't seem like it, but the fabric edges of the patches have to be fixed with a stitching. Depending on the fabric quality, sometimes a straight stitch is enough, but you can also choose here, for example, a zigzag stitch. I've chosen here stitch number 84 of my sewing machine, which looks like this. I found this really cute and it really looks like a hand stitch. The next component of my embroidery were these small metal sequins or metal plates, which I had to add with a hand stitch. The small cord at the border was the last thing I've sewn to the garment, and here in this clip it was already added. Somehow I forgot to film this. So I'm showing you this on the embroidery on the cloak. As you can see it here, this was quite easy. I've just stitched the cord on with a zigzag stitch. Both the sequins and the cord I've had for at least 10 years, I think, and you cannot believe how satisfying this was to finally use them. The cord is now even completely used up. Sewing the cloak I haven't filmed, because here I followed another tutorial from NEG Designs, which is, by the way, a really great tutorial and very easy to follow, so I'll just link her video down below in the description box. To match this cloak to my medieval outfit, I've also added a leaf embroidery here in the corners at the front, only the sequins are still missing here. This old IKEA fur was another thing that was laying around in some corner in our house and wasn't really used for decoration or something else. So I've decided to make a shoulder fur for my medieval outfit out of it. If you like the outcome, I've prepared a free pattern for you, which you can download on my homepage. The link you will find below this video. Please note that there is no seam allowance included, of course, because it's made for real fur. And of course that the outer outlines are flexible because I've just copied my outline here and this is probably different on your fur. You can see here that I'm just cutting the neck hole and leaving the outer outline like it is so that I can use up this half of the fur. If you're making your shoulder fur with fake fur, of course you have to add seam allowance all around, because in this case you would add a second layer out of another fabric. As always with fur, it is important to cut it in a specific way so that the hair is only cut where it's necessary. When cutting, you don't open the scissors very much. You move the scissor blades only a little bit and guide it closely along the backing of the fur or fake fur. Like this, basically, you try to cut only the backing of the fur, the leather part or the woven fabric part, and not the hair part.
if you need more sewing tips for working with fake fur, I link you here another video where I saw my jacket pattern Rebecca out of fake fur with long hair. There I'm showing you some tips, but here in this case, in this video, the work is already done after cutting the fur. I haven't added any closures or any other details to the shoulder fur. Next, I wanted to make a small bag hanging off a belt, and for this I used this old handbag. Out of the long strap of the bag, which was here, I've already made a belt, and I've also cut 2 loops here where the small bag should be attached to. At first I had to take apart the bag to have better access to the leather material. Then I've cut a rectangle for the main part of the bag, which was 22 by 11 centimeter. And the only other part which I needed then was the flap. This smaller rectangle I've cut in 11 by 6 centimeter. And here's the easy construction of the bag. The main part I'm just folding into the half. I mean not 100% in half, because at the top we need a small space for the flap seam. Then the flap, of course, comes on top of this. And the 2 loops should be attached at the right and the left in the flap seam. Then I started with the side seam of the bag. As you can see it here, I'm making the stitching from the right leather side, just tightly along the edge. I think for this rustic style this is nice. I only made one mistake here. I was using the normal sewing foot, and this doesn't work at all with the leather surface. So I quickly changed to my Teflon sewing foot. And with this everything was fine. The sewing foot glided very well over the leather. And by the way, for the needle I didn't make any changes. I just used the normal sewing needle. I even used one in size 80 to be honest, but my leather was quite soft. Then I made the top seam, which attaches the flap and the loops in just one working step. This seam also is done from the outside of the bag, means from the right leather side. Then I decided to round off the lower corners of the flap. This time I really didn't have an exact design in my mind when I started with the bag. I just went with the flow. So the decision to cut the corners came spontaneously, as well as to add the leaf design also to the bag. So I sewed on 3 leaves to the flap, just with the same technique as I've showed you before, which worked really very well, as you can see it here. In the end I only added a press button in a nice brass color to finish the bag. I'm always a little bit afraid that press buttons will tear the material, so here underneath the button parts I've added small patches of a hard interlining to reinforce the leather in this area. And here is now the ready bag.
Okay, that's it for today's video. This is my medieval inspired outfit up to now, but I think it's a work in progress and I'll add some details from time to time. Just for now, as spring is approaching a little bit, I think I'll pause with this sewing project because this feels rather like an autumn or winter outfit even. So probably I'll continue working on it, perhaps in September or October. Here you can see now the details which I've added. The bag is here, which is really quite nice, I think. And the shoulder fur, of course. What's still missing is perhaps some undergarments. I'm thinking about an underskirt out of this lining fabric, of which I have still quite a lot at home. And I also could imagine an Emma shirt, an Emma t-shirt for underneath. If you don't know this design, this is a fitted t-shirt with a small mock collar. And I think this could be quite nice in a wool, perhaps, wool jersey, for underneath this to make this outfit even more winterly. Then of course some jewelry would also be nice, perhaps a headpiece or something like this, I don't know yet, in brass color. Perhaps this could be also quite easily made with wire, but I have to think a little bit more about this idea. So this is nothing for now at the moment. But what do you think? What's still missing in my outfit? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching as always, and thank you also for going this fantasy-inspired way with me. If you need help or if you have any question with your Koba.Siani sewing project, don't hesitate to contact me. You can always write me an email to info@Koba.Siani.com. As always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like this video here. And see you again very soon, hopefully, to my next sewing video. Take care until then. Bye!